dear friends. This is Meridian Grace, and this is going to be a very different type of YouTube today, because I have had an extraordinary experience. And from that experience, I realized that so few of us have ever really looked at the gifts of focusing on our experience of death and how that can deepen our appreciation of life. I have been so gifted to experience the work of an extraordinary Roshi in Boulder, Colorado, who for, I guess it's been 16 years now, has been offering this course called Coming Full Circle. And Coming Full Circle helps us to recognize some of the traditions from all over the world that actually bring meaning and healing to a whole family and community through the process of dying. But what it's also done for me is it's helped me to recognize that death is part of my every moment. You know, there's a lot of science out there that recognizes that every moment millions of cells are dying and millions of cells are being born. And I believe in one of my recent YouTubes, I talked about Deepak Chopra's work where he was discussing with the MIT scientists about how with every breath we take, we're breathing out millions of molecules and breathing in millions of molecules. And so we are literally combining our essences. I mean, we are breathing in the same molecules sometimes that Christ may have been breathing, or Hitler. I mean, we're one with it all. And somehow, when we realize some of the deep contemplations that have been part of Buddhism forever, and Roshi Sanchi Reta is a Roshi in the Zen tradition, so of course she's going to be sharing pieces from that tradition with us also. But one of the key contemplations that she invites us to just really, not just say the words, but actually walk in nature and invite them to inform us from inside. Well, there's 9 of them. They're called Atisha's contemplations. But one of them that was so wonderful for me to look at is, death will come whether or not we are prepared for it, when it's its right time. And we never know when it's going to come. You know, there are so many amazing stories that we were looking at of people whose children were hit by a car. No one expected that to happen. You know, and how do we deal with something like that? How do we sincerely open ourselves to that feeling? Not that some piece of that grief won't stay with us for the rest of our lives, but how can we use that? How can we open to that in such a way that it makes us a deeper, more compassionate person to really honor the life of the people that we love and we care about the most? So there are people who've spent their whole life helping people get in touch with these things. And you know, I have recently been what I would call just cracked wide open with the gifts of people who have been spending their lives doing this. People like Stephen Levine and his wife Andrea, who had a center where they invited people who were given diagnoses that looked like they were terminal. And what pretty much everyone said by the experience of being with them, and some of the gifts I'm going to share with you today of their life and their work, they all felt like they were healed. Their hearts and their souls were healed. And interestingly enough, many of their bodies also healed. But that wasn't ever the focus. the focus was on how do we fully open to the experience that's happening to us right now. And instead of using the word like to relax, the primary teaching was, how can we soften and open to every feeling we have? How can we be merciful and compassionate, first to ourselves, and then to whoever is in our life who we may think has been a perpetrator towards us? Can we actually relax our bellies or soften our bellies? Can we actually soften our jaws? And the science would say there are so many different nerve endings that go and innervate so many different parts of the body, in the belly and in the jaw. And if we can just learn to notice when we are tightening our jaw or tightening our belly, and actually soften to those things, we can begin to open to the gifts that are hiding underneath what looks like might be a catastrophe. I mean, by really deepening in to the experience of grief, we can go through the grief, and underneath it, there is a connection with soul that can awaken us to the incredible gift that our life is beyond anything that the mind can imagine. Only the being can. And many people would call that even an enlightenment experience. It certainly is a lightening experience. It takes us into the deepest parts of who we are when we can learn to soften into pain. And by the way, it's not just emotional pain that this is amazing for, but it's truly incredible for physical pain as well. So much of our pain, physical pain, comes from the hardening and the contraction. I mean, scientifically we know that if we contract around something, it makes it really hard for the blood flow to get in and bring nutrients to an area, but also take toxins out of an area. And that contraction, wherever it is, wherever the blood flow can't go, is where we start to experience pain. So if we can allow that, soften into the pain, and let it inform us. There's such a beautiful story in Buddhism about Mara, who was always trying to undermine the Buddha in every way, trying to stop his progression, trying to get in the way, testing him about everything, from materialism to love to women to everything that, to war to everything. And there's all these beautiful stories, some metaphorical, about him overcoming all these challenges. But after he did and he became the Buddha, he never stopped appreciating how those challenges brought him to his enlightenment. And so he would invite Mara in for tea and invite Mara to challenge him even more. And he would metaphorically soften to everything that Mara might try and destroy him with. He would open to it, take it in, explore it. So one of the ways we experience metaphorically Mara in ourselves is pain. Now, I used to do a lot of meditation. At one point in an ashram, I spent as much as 18 hours a day, where we would meditate for an hour and do a meditative walk for half an hour and meditate again and back and forth all day long. And in those kind of situations, believe me, there's no way around having physical pain from sitting, even when you're young, which I'm not anymore. But, your knees will ache, your hips will ache. And typically what people will do is they'll just fidget all over the place trying to find some way to be comfortable. Well, if you were to take this advice, which was offered to us many years ago, I'm only now really deepening to the understanding of how helpful it can be on so many levels. The advice was, whatever is hurting, instead of trying to fidget and change it and do something with it, if you can just bring your awareness to it, ask it just to let you know what's going on. Is it tingling? Is it sharp shooting pain? Is it aching pain? Is it crackling pain? Does it have a color? Does it have a sound? Does it have a sensation? And just really invite it to inform you. The wildest thing is it goes away. And I saw that over and over again when I was doing these long sits, that it really does make a difference to invite it in, to be present to it. But this piece of actually softening the belly and softening the jaw as you bring your awareness to where the pain is truly amazing, be it emotional pain or anything else. So one of the deepest issues for almost all of us is that we have a lot of shame and self-blame and maybe even self-hatred, particularly if we tend to be more the empathic type of person. And if we can actually look at something I may have blamed myself for and feel like I should never be forgiven for it, and find a place in yourself that you can. For instance, I'll lay myself bare here. My beautiful son, when he was born in Hawaii under a banana tree. It was truly an amazing experience, which I'll not get into right now, but I'll just say that unlike most women, it was one of the most profoundly spiritual experiences of my life and was not physically painful. But when when he was about 8 years old, I got into a new relationship with someone, and I had talked to my son about taking him to Hawaii to visit his birthplace. And it was just going to be the two of us. And he and I went together, just the two of us. And the person that I was in relationship with, actually, I'm not sure if he was my husband yet or not, but the person who I was in relationship with just really begged me to come to join us. And I didn't consult Shiloh, my son. And it broke his heart that I let him come. And it really was so, I have felt guilt about that. Really, up until recently, when he and I sat down and talked about it, we've talked about it numerous times, but I still continued to feel guilt about it. Even though he said he totally forgave me, that he felt it was really important, because he and I were so tied at the hip, he felt like he would have been, a mama's boy as an adult if we didn't have something like that to come into our experience, for him to feel more independent and to feel mad at me, and to try to take his own selfness instead of just our connectedness, because I was a single mother with him. And I took that into my practice, and there were so many deep revelations that I felt as I softened into it, and the sadness poured and the tears poured, but I was able to eventually be merciful enough with myself to forgive myself. That kind of practice not only can help with your emotional state, but I think you all have been getting the idea over the years with both my YouTubes and Dr. Massey's YouTubes that every physical issue that we have is related to some type of emotional conflict. When you go in and you deeply forgive yourself and find mercy for yourself and open yourself to the feelings that are hidden inside of you, a profound level of healing can take place for you. And then if you combine it perhaps with a health issue that you're having around with the recall healing about the emotions that are involved with it, and you go looking for those in yourself. If you can find the mercy and the compassion and literally just work with softening your belly, softening your jaw as you go in and you explore the feelings and let yourself really sit with the pain and let it inform you. Truly amazing healing can take place for you on a physical and emotional level. Why it helps to lighten you, to enlighten you, to help you to feel one with all, with the state of humanity. Because this is a big part. Humanity seems to know how to suffer a lot. So having a tool that will help you, and I hate to even call it a tool, that sounds so mechanical, but to have something that you can use to experience the depth of your own compassion, which is not encouraged, but it is a quality that we have as humans. Your own compassion and mercy for yourself is so immensely important. So we looked very directly at the physical act of dying. But I just want you to know that beyond, the subtle levels of dying, like are happening all the time that we're not aware of, like cells dying and new ones being born. There are levels of dying that most of us have experienced. The death of a relationship. I'm going through that one right now. How can we really hold the death of a relationship in our hearts and all the feelings that we really have, and be deeply compassionate and tender with ourselves, and be willing to feel all the feelings, to let it crack us wide open, to cry the tears if they're there that are ready to be cried, to laugh about and be grateful for the special moments that were there, to see how even when a relationship was profoundly painful, it may have contributed something to you that has made you who you are now, and what a blessing that has been. And that peace can just bring so much beauty to you. In this course, we were all asked to find a piece of poetry that was deeply moving to us around the idea of death, and bring it. Death or grief or sadness or loss. And, well, I'm not sure which one I chose, but I'm going to trust that my hand went to the right one. So this one is called The Unbroken, and it's from Roshani. And it says, "There is a brokenness out of which comes the unbroken, a shatteredness out of which blooms the unshatterable. There is a sorrow beyond all grief that leads to joy, and frailty out of whose depths emerge strength. There is a hollow space too vast for words, through which we pass with each loss, out of whose darkness we are sanctioned into being. There is a cry deeper than all sound, whose serrated edges cut the heart as we break open to the place inside, which is unbearable and whole." There are such extraordinary beings who have done the work, who have walked the walk, who have felt these things deeply, and have helped those of us who have been so busy with everyday life that we haven't noticed some of these deeper aspects of life. And I am so grateful for what they've done. This piece by Roshani, I would encourage you, if you want, to just rewind what you've just listened to and maybe listen to it again and sit with it for a few minutes and let it touch you. See how it feels. And soften your belly to it. Soften your jaw to it. And see what it might mean for you. See where it might take you. Now, I'm still a homeopath, and I still recognize these places in the dying process where we are resistant and where pain may overwhelm us and where we have not found a way yet to soften fully to them. And some of the gifts that homeopathy has given to us with reducing pain, and be that emotional pain or physical pain, it's really quite astounding. I mean, one of the remedies I use so much with people when they're in the throes of the death process, or even helping to bring people out of coma, is, I use a different one for bringing people out of coma, but the one that I use so often for people when they're dying and they're afraid of dying and they're really scared and they're really anxious is homeopathic arsenicum. And oftentimes we will see that the fear not only goes away, but people who looked like they only had a few days left to live might actually get this huge burst of energy for as long as 2 weeks. And during that time, because the fear of dying is gone, they can complete with love with their families. They can say the things they might have been afraid to say. They are facing death without fear, and they can share their love and complete with their families in ways that might be meaningful for the whole rest of the family. So I really love this integration of homeopathy with our willingness to soften and take things in deeply. You know, if you're going through a huge loss emotionally of a relationship or a child that has just died, it's so helpful to work with homeopathic ignitia while you soften and open yourself. And you may find that you can do it in a way that is so much easier for you as you begin to recognize the incredible gift that that being's life was, and possibly a destiny that that child or person may have that we just were not aware of. So, a story about that. I had a Tibetan Buddhist teacher for a number of years, and he had 2 students, a husband and wife, who were pregnant with a child and were so excited about it. And the baby was a stillborn. And they went to the Roshi. They said, or Roshi, I'm sorry, they went to the Rinpoche and said, why? Why did this happen? And he explained to them that this being, all it needed was to have one more experience of being carried in the womb to complete its cycles and complete its enlightenment. And that they were deep enough, compassionate enough, awake enough beings that this being chose to grace them with its presence in their lives for those 9 months. And that it would always be with them, blessing them from the other side. and helping them with their journey. Now, most of us aren't aware of things at that level, but it's interesting to me that so many traditions, particularly contemplative type traditions, and shamans who can see these sorts of things, and we just think that there's nothing sometimes for these little beings that leave us so early. But it looks like there may be more than what our training and the way that we've lived has helped us to see, that may be a blessing beyond a blessing. Not that there isn't suffering there, not that you need to pretend like you're not sad if you are sad. Because if you are, you want to soften to that sadness and let it teach you. Because there's no emotion that cannot teach us, that cannot awaken us, if we take it deep enough and be open to it. I also want to tell you that there's an amazing work that was done by Stephen Jenkinson. It's a very different kind of work. He's not so much of a soft kind of person, but more of an in-your-face kind of person. But he has so benefited the whole movement about how medically we deal with death. He was in Toronto, Canada. He's, I think, a degreed psychologist from Harvard Medical School. He ran the, I forget the name right now, perhaps it will come to me, the program for a very large hospital in Toronto that has to do with how they treat people as they're dying, the medications, the keeping people alive on all kinds of life support and all the rest of it. And his work has been to help people understand the process of death and how to die well as a real gift to the family. And I am going to be including a bibliography with this talk. And Stephen Jenkinson's work is going to be in there. I believe his website is Orphan Wisdom. He pretty much believes that most of us in the United States, unless we're Native Americans, are orphans, and we are not giving our bodies back to the land in the location of our ancestors. And that it's really important that we deeply honor and recognize the tradition of our ancestors as we move back through life, but that we and give our bodies up to the earth or through ash or however it is that we choose to die. And he helps people before they die to actually become very aware of all of our options and make conscious choices about what we want to do and how to create celebrations of life. And of course, this is also a big part of what we were doing from many different traditions in our Coming Full Circle program, about perhaps doing videos where you share what you want to share with your children that you may not ever see on the physical, but gifts that you might want to give to them, understandings that your life has given to you, that you can truly pass on gifts to your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and to those unborn yet. So he's looking at how you can make a difference with that, how you want to be eulogized. Maybe you want to actually do a part of your own eulogy. You know, if you want to be buried in like the green burial movement, many people don't know anything about that. I was thinking maybe I could interview someone who's really involved with that, so that you can know that there are so many options that we don't necessarily know about, where you can just give your body back to the earth in a bag instead of in a cotton bag rather than putting your body back to the earth in some fancy wooden box and being all embalmed and things like that. Traditions of other cultures, like when my beloved Sean died, I was a Sufi, and I spent the whole night massaging his body with oils, placing a heavy crystal on his belly and his eyes, and my community of friends were there with me, and we were all praying together for him through the night. It was an incredible experience, and I don't know if I would have been able to as gracefully say goodbye to him as I was able to if I didn't have that support of my beautiful community who was with me. And I just have to tell you, because so few people have had the honor that I have. I've been invited to be there when many people have left their bodies, and it's been one of the deepest honors I've ever had to be there as people take their last breath. And Sean was in my arms, and oh my goodness, just feeling this. We looked deeply into each other's eyes, and I watched him just light up like a 1,000-watt light bulb as he took his last breath, and it was like, and his whole face just went into like he was seeing an angelic kingdom or something. It was like he was just set free, and it was quite an astounding experience to go through with him, because he was 6'5" and ended up 85 pounds. So I watched him really deteriorate, and I knew it was a freedom for him to let go of his body, but he didn't want to until that moment. That very morning he was asking me about, could we try another healing technology? He was so young, he was 33, and he just wanted to live. Because actually we had really found love together, and that had been the first time in his life, and he wanted more of it. But I know that he found that on the other side, and he's been with me ever since, and it's been a precious, precious gift. So there's so much we don't understand about all of this. And I want to encourage you to start to explore the possibilities of letting death heal you. Letting death support you in really being alive. And with that in mind, let me see if I can find this really unusual little poem that kind of shocked me when I first heard it. And this is by someone named Philip Larkin, and it's called The Mower. And it goes, the mower stalled twice. Kneeling, I found a hedgehog jammed up against the blades, killed. It had been in the long grass. I had seen it before, and I even fed it once. Now I had mauled its unobtrusive world unmendably. Burial was no help. Next morning I got up, and it did not. The first day after a death, the new absence is always the same. We should be careful. Careful of each other. We should be kind while there is still time. So I'm going to leave you with that. I leave you with being kind to yourself first. I leave you with being kind to the people that you care about in your life. I leave you with the recognition that we don't know that we even have another breath, and that life is precious. that you are precious. You are precious to me. And the Buddhist words are simply, may you be filled with peace. May you be filled with joy. May you be released from all suffering.